The massive crystal chamber glowed with soft blue light as the Galactic Council gathered for their monthly meeting. High above the planet Zephyr Prime, the Council station rotated slowly in space. Its walls were made from the finest materials taken from conquered worlds across 847 star systems. Admiral stood at the center of the chamber. His tall, gray body was covered in the ceremonial armor of the military. 4 arms crossed behind his back as he waited for permission to speak. Around him, the council members sat on floating platforms that moved through the air like gentle clouds. High Commander raised one of her 6 hands. The room fell silent. Her voice echoed through the chamber as she spoke. "Admiral, present your report on the next target for expansion." The Admiral stepped forward. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed a small blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. The planet looked peaceful, with white clouds swirling over vast oceans. "Council members," began, "I present the 3rd planet of the Sol system. The inhabitants call it Earth. Our long-range scouts have been watching this world for 50 of their years." Council member leaned forward on his platform. His insect-like features showed curiosity. "What makes this primitive world worth our attention, Admiral?" Touched a control pad. The hologram zoomed closer to show Earth's surface. Cities appeared, connected by thin lines that the scouts had identified as transportation routes. "The planet has several valuable features," the Admiral explained. "First, it contains vast amounts of fresh water, more than any world we have found in the past century. Second, the planet sits in a perfect location. It would serve as an excellent base for expanding into this spiral arm of the galaxy." The hologram changed to show crude human spacecraft. Rockets that burned chemical fuel struggled to break free from Earth's gravity. Space stations that looked like metal cans tumbled slowly in orbit. Council member laughed. Her tentacles wiggled with amusement. "These creatures still burn fossil fuels. How delightfully primitive. What weapons do they possess?" "Nuclear fission bombs," replied. "The most powerful ones can destroy their largest cities. They have flying machines that move through their atmosphere. Some can travel faster than sound. Their space capabilities are extremely limited. They have only visited their moon a few times." High Commander studied the display with interest. "How long ago did they achieve spaceflight?" "Less than 100 of their years," the Admiral answered. "They are children playing with fire, Commander. Our scouts report that they still fight wars among themselves. Different groups of humans battle over resources and territory." The council members whispered among themselves. Council member E spoke next. His voice was deep and rumbling. "If they fight each other so much, perhaps they are not ready to join our empire. Violent species often cause problems." Admiral shook his head. "Commander, with respect, every species fights before they are properly guided. The humans show promise. They learn quickly and adapt to new situations. Under our rule, they would make excellent workers. The planet could supply food and materials for expansion into dozens of nearby systems." High Commander floated higher above the others. She had ruled the Empire for over 2 centuries. During that time, she had overseen the conquest of 93 different worlds. Each victory had followed the same simple pattern. "Admiral, what force do you recommend for this conquest?" she asked. Straightened his shoulders. "A standard subjugation fleet should be more than sufficient. 12 dreadnoughts with full support vessels. The humans have no orbital defenses, no energy shields, no plasma weapons. Our ships carry technology that is thousands of years more advanced than anything they possess." Council member Al raised a concern. "Admiral, what if other species discover this world during our conquest? Some of the newer Alliance members might object to adding another species by force." The Admiral dismissed the worry with a wave of his hand. "The Sol system is far from any major trade routes. No other species has shown interest in this region of space. By the time anyone discovers what we have done, the humans will already be productive members of our empire. High Commander had heard enough. She had conquered species that were far more advanced than these humans. Some had possessed energy weapons. Others had built space fleets. A few had even developed basic shields. All had fallen to the might of the Empire within days of first contact. "The Council will vote," she declared, "all in favor of adding the Sol system to our empire." One by one, the Council members indicated their approval. Only Council Member N asked for more information. "Commander, our records show that isolated species sometimes develop unusual technologies. Should we send more scouts first?" Considered the question for exactly 3 seconds. "Admiral, how confident are you in your assessment?" The Admiral straightened even more. His forearms moved to emphasize his words. "Commander, I stake my career on this evaluation. The humans are primitive. They pose no threat to even our smallest vessels. A standard fleet will complete this conquest in less than 1 local day." "Then it is decided," High Commander announced. "Admiral will lead 12 dreadnoughts to the Sol system. The conquest will begin in 30 standard days. The humans will surrender or face destruction. Either way, Earth will belong to the Empire." The Council members began to disperse. They had more important matters to discuss. The conquest of primitive worlds had become routine. Most barely remembered the names of species they had conquered years earlier. Admiral remained in the chamber as the others left. He stared at the hologram of Earth with satisfaction. This conquest would advance his career significantly. Perhaps he would even earn a promotion to the High Council itself. The Admiral had no way of knowing that human scouts had detected his own surveillance ships months earlier. He could not imagine that the primitive creatures he planned to conquer had been preparing for this moment for decades. Most importantly, he had no idea that Earth's apparent technological weakness was the greatest deception in galactic history. In 30 days, Admiral would learn the truth about humanity. The lesson would last exactly 17 seconds. The space around Earth's moon rippled like water. 12 massive shapes emerged from the distortion as the fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Each dreadnought stretched over 3 kilometers from nose to tail. Their dark metal hulls blocked the sunlight, casting long shadows across the lunar surface. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. Through the massive viewing window, he could see the blue marble of Earth hanging in the darkness. It looked exactly as the scout reports had described: peaceful, defenseless, primitive. "Navigation, bring us to standard conquest formation," the Admiral ordered. "Communications, prepare the surrender broadcast." Officer Al operated the communication controls with his tentacles. "Admiral, our translation matrix has processed their major languages. We can broadcast in what they call English, Chinese, Spanish, Arabic, and Russian. These appear to be their most common forms of communication." "Excellent," replied. "Begin the standard protocol." The communication officer activated the broadcast system. The surrender message would reach every radio and television device on the planet. It was the same message the Empire had used for over 300 conquests. On Earth, the first signs of the alien arrival appeared on military radar screens around the world. In a mountain bunker deep beneath Colorado, General Sarah Martinez stared at her displays with growing concern. 12 massive contacts had appeared near the moon. Each one was larger than anything humanity had ever built. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," reported Lieutenant Jackson. "It's broadcasting on all frequencies." General Martinez nodded grimly. "Put it through to all command centers. Alert the President and the Security Council. Execute Protocol 7. Similar scenes played out in military centers across the globe. In Moscow, General ordered his nuclear forces to highest alert. In Beijing, Admiral activated the Orbital Defense Network. In London, Air Marshal Davies prepared the RAF for an impossible battle. The alien message began broadcasting across Earth. Admiral's voice, translated into human languages, echoed from every radio and television on the planet. Inhabitants of the third planet, you will listen and obey. I am Admiral of the Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You have one rotation of your planet to surrender completely. All military forces must stand down. All governments must transfer authority to our representatives. The message continued with practiced efficiency. If you surrender peacefully, your species will be relocated to suitable planets within our empire. You will serve useful purposes in our expansion. If you resist, your cities will be destroyed. Your species will be eliminated. This choice has been offered to every world we have conquered. Choose wisely. In the Colorado bunker, General Martinez listened to the alien ultimatum with a mixture of anger and determination. She had spent her entire career preparing for this possibility. Every war game, every training exercise, every sleepless night had led to this moment. "Lieutenant, connect me to Deep Space Command," she ordered. "Authorization Alpha 77. The lieutenant's fingers flew over his keyboard. "Connection established, General." A new voice came through the speakers. It was calm and professional despite the circumstances. "General Martinez, this is Admiral Deep Space Command. We've been monitoring the situation. All defense platforms are online and ready." General Martinez felt a surge of relief. For 50 years, humanity's best scientists and engineers had worked in secret. They had built weapons and defense systems that the public never knew existed. Today, those preparations would be tested. On the flagship, Admiral waited for the expected response. Usually, primitive species reacted in one of three ways. Some immediately surrendered, hopping for mercy. Others attempted to negotiate, offering resources in exchange for freedom. A few tried to resist with their primitive weapons, only to be quickly destroyed. "Admiral," reported Sensor Officer Ra, "we are detecting increased electromagnetic activity from the planet's surface. Multiple launch signatures. They appear to be launching some kind of vehicles." Laughed, the sound echoed across the bridge. "Of course they are, show me." The main display activated, showing dozens of small objects rising from Earth's surface. They moved slowly compared to fighters. Their heat signatures indicated chemical propulsion systems. "Primitive missiles," the Admiral observed. "Probably armed with nuclear warheads. Should we destroy them before they reach us?" His weapons officer X checked his instruments. "Sir, our shields will easily deflect any weapons they possess. Their nuclear devices cannot penetrate even our barriers." "Then let them waste their ammunition," decided. "When they see their best weapons fail harmlessly against our ships, they will understand the futility of resistance." What they did not know was that the objects rising from Earth were not weapons. They were observation satellites, launched to get a better view of the alien fleet. Every detail of the enemy ships was being recorded and analyzed by the most advanced computers humanity had ever built. In space stations hidden throughout the solar system, human observers studied the alien vessels. They had made their ships large and impressive, designed to intimidate conquered species. But size was not everything in space combat. "All observation posts, this is Control," came a voice over the secure communication network. "We have full visual and sensor data on the enemy fleet. Confirm defensive positions." One by one, hidden bases reported their status. Luna Base Alpha, built deep inside the moon, confirmed that their primary weapon was charged and ready. Asteroid Base 7, concealed within a carefully hollowed space rock, reported all systems operational. Saturn Outpost, hidden in the planet's rings, acknowledged readiness. The response that Admiral finally received was not what he expected. Instead of surrender or desperate negotiation, a single message broadcast back toward his fleet. The voice was calm and controlled. Unknown vessels, this is Earth Defense Command. You have 60 seconds to reverse course and leave our solar system. This is your only warning. We do not wish to engage in combat, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. The bridge of the Eternal Conquest fell silent. Every officer stared at their displays in disbelief. Never in the history of the Empire had a primitive species issued an ultimatum to them. Admiral broke the silence with laughter. Did they just threaten us? These creatures who burn fossil fuels and barely reach their own moon. Officer Al checked his sensor readings again. Sir, we show no orbital defense platforms, no battle stations, no fleet of warships. Their largest vessels are in orbit around their planet, and they appear to be scientific stations. The Admiral shook his head in amazement. Their courage is admirable, even if their intelligence is lacking. Begin attack approach. Target their largest cities. Perhaps when they see our power, they will reconsider their position. What Admiral could not detect were the carefully shielded weapon platforms that had been built over decades. What he did not understand was that humanity had learned to hide their most dangerous capabilities. In exactly 57 more seconds, the Admiral would discover that sometimes the most primitive-looking species could be the most dangerous of all. The countdown reached 0. Admiral raised his hand to signal the attack when something impossible happened. The surface of Earth's moon began to move. What looked like a natural crater suddenly opened like a flower. Metal structures rose from beneath the lunar surface. A massive barrel, over 50 meters wide, pointed directly at the fleet. Energy readings spiked to levels that made the alien sensors scream warnings. Admiral, shouted Sensor Officer Ra. Massive energy spike from the planetary satellite. Unknown weapon type. Before could respond, Luna Base Alpha fired its main. The tungsten projectile accelerated to nearly 20% of light speed in less than 2 seconds. It crossed the space between Moon and fleet faster than the computers could track. The lead dreadnought, Void Crusher, simply ceased to exist. The projectile punched through the ship's shields as if they were made of paper. The kinetic energy was so enormous that it vaporized 3 kilometers of advanced alien technology in an instant. Superheated metal and plasma sprayed in all directions. Impossible. Admiral stared at his displays in shock. How can primitives possess such weapons? His shock lasted exactly 2 more seconds. Around Earth, dozens of objects that had appeared to be communications satellites suddenly activated. Each one revealed itself as a heavily armed weapons platform. Particle beams lanced out from hidden positions, striking ships with surgical precision. The dreadnought Morningstar tried to turn away from Earth. Its shields flared as human weapons struck them repeatedly. But these were not the primitive nuclear devices the aliens expected. The particle beams cut through their energy barriers like hot knives through ice. Shields failing on decks 7 through 15, reported the ship's damage control officer. Hull breach on the port side. We're losing atmosphere. Similar reports flooded in from every ship in the fleet. They had designed their vessels to fight other space-faring civilizations. Their shields were perfect against energy weapons and conventional explosives. They had never encountered weapons that accelerated solid matter to relativistic speeds. From the asteroid belt, 3 objects that looked like ordinary space rocks suddenly revealed themselves as military bases. Fusion missiles launched from hidden silos, accelerating toward the fleet. Each missile carried enough destructive power to level a mountain. Admiral tried to coordinate his fleet's response. All ships, return fire, target the weapon platforms. The vessels opened fire with their plasma cannons and energy beams. The weapons that had conquered nearly 1,000 worlds struck the human defensive positions. For a moment, felt hope. Surely their superior technology would prevail. But the human platforms were protected by shields that operated on completely different principles. Instead of trying to deflect energy, They absorbed it and redirected the power to their own weapon systems. The attack only made the human weapons stronger. "Sir, our weapons are having no effect," reported Weapons Officer X. "Their defensive systems appear to be absorbing our energy output." The dreadnought Stellar Conquest suffered a direct hit from a human fusion missile. The warhead penetrated deep into the ship's hull before exploding. The fusion reaction tore the vessel apart from the inside. Pieces of the mighty warship tumbled through space, trailing atmosphere and debris. In the rings of Saturn, humanity's most distant outpost activated its weapons. A beam of focused particles, accelerated through a magnetic field over 1,000 kilometers long, reached across the solar system. The beam struck the dreadnought Galactic Pride with the force of a small star. Admiral watched his fleet die around him. In 10 seconds, he had lost 8 of his 12 dreadnoughts. The surviving ships were badly damaged and trying desperately to escape. "Navigation emergency jump to hyperspace," he ordered. "All ships retreat immediately." But the humans had planned for this possibility too. Unknown to the Earth's defenders had placed gravity generators at specific points around their formation. When activated, these devices created gravitational distortions that prevented hyperspace jumps. The dreadnought Eternal Conquest shuddered as its hyperspace engines failed to engage. "Admiral, we cannot jump," reported the navigation officer. "Something is preventing our departure." Finally understood the truth. This was not a primitive species defending their world with desperate courage. This was a trap, carefully planned and perfectly executed. The humans had known about the Empire for decades. They had prepared for this invasion with the patience and skill of master strategists. From concealed positions throughout the solar system, human weapons continued their devastating attack. The few surviving ships found themselves surrounded by enemies they could not see and could not fight. The dreadnought Blood Moon exploded as a projectile from an asteroid base struck its reactor core. The antimatter containment failed, creating a brief new star in Earth's sky. The shock wave damaged 2 nearby vessels, sending them tumbling out of control. "All ships concentrate fire on the planetary satellite," Admiral ordered in desperation. "Destroy their primary weapon." 3 surviving dreadnoughts turned their weapons toward Luna Base Alpha. Every plasma cannon and energy beam focused on the human installation. For a moment, the moon's surface glowed white-hot under the assault. But Luna Base Alpha had been built to withstand exactly this kind of attack. Layers of armor and energy shields, designed by Earth's best engineers, absorbed the weapon's fire. The bases rotated toward a new target and fired again. The projectile struck Admiral's flagship directly in the bridge. The tungsten rod, moving at 60,000 kilometers per second, passed completely through the ship and out the other side. Everything in its path simply vanished, converted to superheated plasma. Admiral had exactly enough time to understand that he had made the greatest mistake in history. His species had attacked a civilization that was not primitive at all. The humans had simply chosen to appear weak while building the most advanced defensive network in the galaxy. The bridge of the Eternal Conquest disappeared in a flash of white light. Admiral's final thought was a warning he would never be able to send home. The humans were not the prey his empire believed them to be. They were predators who had been waiting patiently for something stupid enough to threaten their world. 17 seconds after the battle began, only 3 ships remained intact. 2 were completely disabled, their crews dead or dying. The third, the destroyer Swift Vengeance, had been damaged but retained enough power to escape. Captain, the ship's commanding officer, made the only decision possible. "Emergency jump, maximum distance," he ordered. "We must warn the Empire." The Swift Vengeance disappeared into hyperspace, carrying news that would shake the Empire to its foundation. Behind them, the wreckage of 11 dreadnoughts drifted in Earth's orbital space, a monument to the folly of underestimating humanity. In command centers across Earth, human military officers watched the alien retreat with grim satisfaction. The trap had worked perfectly, but they all knew this was only the beginning. Word of Earth's capabilities would spread across the galaxy, and humanity would need to be ready for whatever came next. The destroyer Swift Vengeance limped through hyperspace for 6 standard days before reaching territory. Captain had lost half his crew during the escape from Earth. The ship's hull was by human weapons that his engineers could not identify. When the Swift Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace near Zephyr Prime, the captain immediately sent an emergency message to High Command. The message was simple but terrifying. Admiral is dead. The fleet is destroyed. The humans are not primitive. High Commander received the message while reviewing expansion plans for the next year. She read it 3 times before calling for an immediate council meeting. Within 1 hour, every senior military officer in the Empire had gathered in the Crystal Chamber. Captain stood before the council, his uniform torn and his body bandaged from injuries sustained during the battle. When he spoke, his voice was hollow with shock. Commanders, I watched 11 dreadnoughts die in 17 seconds. The humans possess weapons that ignore our shields. They have defensive platforms that we could not detect. They fought like they had been preparing for our attack for decades. Council member Al leaned forward. Captain, you claim that primitives with chemical rockets destroyed our finest ships. They are not primitives, replied firmly. That was our mistake. Everything we observed was designed to make us think they were weak. Their real technology is hidden, advanced, deadly. The captain activated a holographic display showing what remained of his sensor data from the battle. The council watched in silence as human weapons tore through ships like they were made of paper. Their primary weapon accelerated projectiles to 20% of light speed, continued. Our shields, designed to stop energy beams, offered no protection. They also used particle weapons and fusion missiles that we have never encountered. High Commander studied the data carefully. In her 2 centuries of leadership, she had never seen a fleet defeated so completely. Even their most challenging conquests had taken days or weeks to complete. How many humans were involved in this battle? She asked. Captain shook his head. We never saw a single enemy soldier, Commander. No fighters, no battle cruisers, just weapons platforms that appeared from nowhere and destroyed everything we had. The council chamber fell silent. For the first time in their history, the Empire faced the reality that they were not the most powerful force in the galaxy. Meanwhile, on Earth, a very different kind of meeting was taking place. In a secure conference room beneath the United Nations building, the world's leaders gathered to discuss what they had learned from the captured alien technology. General Martinez stood at the front of the room, pointing to displays showing star charts and databases recovered from the wreckage. The information they contained was staggering. Ladies and, she began, we now know that we are not alone in the galaxy. The Empire controls over 800 star systems. They have conquered hundreds of different species. Earth was supposed to be their next target. President Williams of the United States studied the star charts with growing concern. General, how long have we known about this threat? Admiral of Deep Space Command answered the question. Sir, we detected the first scout ships in 1963. Over the past 60 years, we have been preparing for exactly what happened yesterday. The revelation shocked many of the world leaders. Prime Minister of Japan spoke first. You built all those weapons without telling our governments. Sir, we operated under international agreements signed in secret after the first contact, Admiral explained. Every major nation contributed resources and personnel. The project was classified at the highest levels to prevent panic and to maintain the appearance of technological weakness. Dr. Sarah, the lead scientist on the defensive project, stepped forward to explain further. We realized early that any attacking force would study us before invasion. We made sure they would see exactly what we wanted them to see. Chemical rockets instead of our real spacecraft. Nuclear power instead of fusion technology. Primitive satellites instead of our actual orbital network. Chancellor of Germany asked the obvious question. How advanced is our real technology? Sir, we are approximately 50 years ahead of what the public knows, Doctor replied. Our defensive can accelerate projectiles to 25% of light speed. Our fusion reactors provide nearly unlimited power. Our computer systems use quantum processing that makes the technology look outdated. The information continued to astound the assembled leaders. Earth's apparent technological backwardness had been the greatest military deception in history. President Williams looked at the alien star charts again. What happens now? Will more aliens come? General Martinez nodded grimly. Sir, that's almost certain. But the situation has changed dramatically. According to the databases, news of our victory will spread quickly. Other species will want to know who defeated the Empire's finest fleet. Across the galaxy, that prediction proved accurate. Within days of the swift vengeance's return, rumors began spreading through every spaceport and trading station. The mighty Empire had suffered their first major defeat in centuries. On the peaceful world of Seven, the ruling council of the Federation received a message from their spy network within space. They had been conquered 40 years earlier and forced to provide resources for the Empire's expansion. The reports are confirmed, announced Intelligence Minister Ra. The humans destroyed an entire subjugation fleet. Admiral himself was killed in the attack. The council members looked at each other with expressions of hope they had not felt in decades. If the mighty could be defeated, perhaps their empire was not as invincible as everyone believed. Similar conversations took place on dozens of worlds. Species that had been conquered years or decades earlier began to whisper about rebellion. Others that had never been contacted by the wondered if these mysterious humans might offer protection from future attacks. In the neutral trading hub of Sigma Station, representatives from various species gathered to share information. The station served as a meeting place for civilizations that wanted to avoid the attention of the major empires. Captain of the Independent Mining Guild called for order. Friends, we have all heard the rumors. The question is, what do they mean for the rest of us? Ambassador of the Republic had obtained the most detailed information. My sources within the military confirm the basic facts. 11 dreadnoughts were destroyed in less than 20 seconds. The humans used weapons that the Empire had never encountered before. The gathering buzzed with excited conversation. If the reports were true, the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted dramatically. Doctor, a scientist from the research collective, raised an important question. If these humans are so advanced, why did they hide their capabilities? Most species display their strength to discourage attacks. Captain had been wondering the same thing. Perhaps they wanted to be left alone, or perhaps they were setting a trap for anyone foolish enough to attack them. The conversation continued late into the station's night cycle. For the first time in generations, species throughout the galaxy began to imagine a future where the Empire was not the ultimate authority. Back on Zephyr Prime, High Commander faced a crisis that threatened everything her people had built. Rebellions had already begun on 3 conquered worlds. Other species were refusing to pay tribute. The Empire's reputation for invincibility had been shattered in 17 seconds. She stood alone in her private chambers, staring out at the stars that had once seemed so easy to conquer. Somewhere out there, a species called humanity had proven that the Empire was not as powerful as they believed. The question now was what to do about it. For the first time in her long life, High Commander considered the possibility that the way of ruling through fear and force might need to change. The humans had shown that some species could not be conquered. Perhaps it was time to learn if they could be negotiated with instead. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, The galactic political map looked completely different. The Empire, once the most feared force in known space, struggled to maintain control over its own territory. High Commander stood in her private office, reading reports that grew worse each day. 17 worlds had declared independence. The Federation had rebuilt their military and was actively supporting rebel groups. Trading partners that had once paid tribute in fear now demanded fair negotiations. Her aide, General Al, entered with another batch of disturbing news. Commander, the Seven System has officially withdrawn from the Empire. They cite the Terran Accords as their legal justification. Closed her eyes in frustration. The Terran Accords had become the most important document in galactic politics, and she had never even seen a copy. What exactly are these accords, General? A treaty established by the humans 6 months ago, Commander. It guarantees the right of all species to self-determination and protection from aggressive expansion. Over 40 civilizations have signed it already. The irony was not lost on. The species she had planned to conquer in a single day had become the center of a new galactic alliance. An alliance built on principles completely opposite to everything the Empire represented. Halfway across the galaxy, Admiral Sarah walked through the halls of Terra Station. The massive space station orbited Earth at the L5 point, serving as humanity's first embassy to the galactic community. The station had been built in record time, using technologies that had been hidden for decades. Admiral paused at an observation deck to watch the traffic around the station. Ships from dozens of different species came and went daily. Some brought trade offers, others requested defensive alliances. A few simply wanted to meet the species that had destroyed the fleet so completely. Admiral, her aide Lieutenant Park approached with a data pad. The delegation has arrived for the negotiations. They're requesting immediate audience. Admiral nodded. They had been one of the first species to contact Earth after the battle. They're sat dangerously close to space, and they feared retaliation for supporting the growing rebellion. In the main conference room, Ambassador of the Republic waited nervously. He had never negotiated with a species powerful enough to defeat the stories he had heard about human military capabilities were almost impossible to believe. Admiral entered the room with a small diplomatic team. She wore a simple uniform that bore none of the elaborate decorations favored by other military leaders in the galaxy. Her manner was professional but friendly. Ambassador, welcome to Terra Station. I understand your people are interested in joining our mutual defense network. The ambassador nodded eagerly. Admiral, my government is very concerned about retaliation. We have withdrawn from their empire, but we fear they will attempt to reconquer us by force. Admiral consulted her notes. They have been under rule for 38 years, correct? During that time, were there any attempts at rebellion? Several small uprisings, Admiral. All were crushed quickly. The Empire has a policy of making examples of rebellious worlds. The human admiral considered this information carefully. Ambassador, humanity's position is simple. We will not interfere in the internal affairs of other species. However, we will defend any civilization that is attacked by an aggressive empire. If they attempt to reconquer your world, they will face the same response they encountered at Earth. Ambassador felt a surge of hope. The protection of the species that had defeated 11 dreadnoughts in 17 seconds would guarantee independence. What does your government require in return for this protection? He asked. Admiral smiled slightly. Nothing except a commitment to peaceful relations with your neighbors. We are not interested in building an empire of our own. We simply want to ensure that no species is forced to submit to aggressive conquest. The negotiations continued for several hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. By the end of the day, the Republic had become the 41st signatory to the Terran Accords. News of the agreement spread quickly throughout the galaxy. On every world still under rule, oppressed populations heard that another species had gained freedom under human protection. The psychological impact was enormous. Within the empire itself, military commanders began to question their leader's wisdom. General, or commander of the Third Fleet, sent a private message to High Commander. "Commander, my intelligence officers report that human ships have been observed in 17 systems. They appear to be conducting diplomatic missions rather than military operations. However, these same sources confirm that human defensive capabilities far exceed our original estimates." The message continued with recommendations that would have been unthinkable before the Battle of Earth. "Commander, I strongly advise against any military action directed at human interests. Perhaps it is time to consider diplomatic contact." High Commander read the message 3 times. The idea of the mighty empire seeking negotiations with a species they had planned to conquer was humiliating, but it might also be necessary for survival. On Earth, world leaders gathered for their monthly security briefing. The planet that had once seemed isolated and vulnerable now found itself at the center of galactic politics. President Williams reviewed the latest intelligence reports. "Admiral, what is the current status of the Empire?" "Mr. President, their military capabilities remain significant, but their political authority is collapsing. We estimate that they have lost effective control over nearly 30% of their territory. More rebellions are beginning each week." Secretary of Defense Harrison asked the obvious question: "Do we expect them to attempt retaliation against Earth?" Admiral shook her head. "Sir, our intelligence suggests they are too busy dealing with internal problems. However, we are maintaining full defensive readiness. Our orbital platforms remain active, and our deep space monitoring network has detected no hostile fleet movements." Doctor, who had led the development of Earth's defensive systems, provided an update on humanity's expanding capabilities. "Mr. President, construction is proceeding on schedule for the new defensive installations. Within 2 years, we will have orbital weapons platforms protecting every major population center in the solar system." But the most significant development was taking place in the hidden shipyards that orbited behind the sun. For 60 years, humanity had focused on defensive technologies. Now, for the first time, they were building ships designed to project power across interstellar distances. These were not warships in the traditional sense. They were massive vessels designed to establish and maintain defensive networks around allied worlds. Each ship carried enough firepower to protect an entire star system, but they were built for defense rather than conquest. Admiral concluded the briefing with humanity's new strategic doctrine. "Our goal remains the same as it has always been. We want to live in peace. We want to explore the galaxy and learn from other civilizations. We will not seek to conquer or control anyone." She paused to let her words sink in. "However, we will also not allow any species to be conquered by aggressive empires. The age of expansion through force is ending. The galaxy is large enough for everyone to find their place without taking someone else's freedom." 3 months later, the first human ship designed for interstellar travel departed the solar system. The vessel, designated Terra's Shield, carried a crew of diplomats, scientists, and military advisors. Its mission was to establish a defensive station in the system. As Terra's Shield activated its hyperspace drive and disappeared among the stars, children on Earth looked up at the night sky with wonder. They were the first human generation to know that they were not alone in the universe. They were also the first to know that their species had earned its place among the stars not through conquest, but through the simple principle that no one should be forced to surrender their freedom. In the Crystal Chamber on Zephyr Prime, High Commander made a decision that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. She ordered her communications officer to send a message toward the Sol system. "To the leaders of Earth," the message began, The Empire requests formal diplomatic contact. We wish to discuss mutual interests and the establishment of peaceful relations between our species. It was the first time in their history that they had asked for negotiations rather than demanding surrender. The age of galactic empires was ending, and a new era of cooperation was about to begin. The humans had won more than a battle. They had changed the galaxy forever.